please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'm going to call the January 11th Select Board meeting to order. I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda, so we'll go over to announcements.
Thank you. Just pretty much what's printed on the warrant there. We do have some committee vacancies for the Council on Aging. And if people are interested in that, the application deadline is January 18th at noon. The board will be reading the names of applicants who have submitted applications on January 25th and February 1st in accordance with its committee appointment policy. And applicants can introduce themselves and review their applications, and appointments will be made on February 8th. Town offices will be closed this coming Monday, January 16th, and that's it for announcements.
Is there anything from the board, any announcements or comments?
I just have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Back before Christmas, we did talk about various working groups for the HDC, and there was some discussion of doing some more research or getting someone to help them. I understand that the HDC is still wants their working groups, and there are multiple legal opinions about whether or not they can have them. I was just wondering if we're doing anything else about that, or we have planned to do anything about that.
I prepared a scope of services and forwarded it to Plus for review with the HCC, and I have not heard back, so I can check in with them about that.
Or just encourage them to get back.
Thank you, Brooke.
I wanted to announce that the second edition of the housing newsletter is out and available, and you can find it on the Affordable Housing Trust page on the town website. And please subscribe so you get it on a regular basis.
Don, I have two things.
Go ahead, Matt.
Number one is, and I'll talk about this more at the end, but just I know people watch the beginning of the meeting, is people should watch the Coastal Resiliency meeting the other day. There was a lot of good stuff there. One was the flood maps are now on GIS, and that's worth looking at and playing with. WPI did some work on the Whaling Museum, which I thought was interesting. And the real big one was the Land Bank has done some scenario planning on Washington Street with a raised path, and found how the water will still get there and how it will get there on Commercial Street. And it's really worth looking at, because it shows that we can have impacts if we raise some areas. And it also shows the importance of working on these things from a holistically, not lot by lot. When you look at it, and so they did a really good job, and I'm glad that that Land Bank is working on it. It's good to see that level of analysis, and we're slowly moving in the right direction. That's number one. Number two, last week I made a comment about the cost of painting a floor, and because I can't help myself. I called a friend who's in construction in the off island and talked to their estimator and to another company, and I was wrong. It was, the bid was where it would be on Nantucket. Basically, they would be either double what it would be there, or they would charge what they normally would, and they would add on costs like travel and housing, etc. So there was a bit of a Nantucket factor, but it wasn't nearly what I thought when looking at it. So I stand corrected on that.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any follow-up. And are there any public comments? This is for items that are not otherwise on our agenda for discussion. There's no one here. I don't see any hands in the online audience. No new business that I'm aware of. Do we have a motion for the approval of minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Citizen Departmental Committee request, Town Clerk request for reappointment of Registrar of Voters.
Yeah,
think
so
someone
moved.
could-
It's,
Make a motion.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Transportation Program Manager request for acceptance of memorandum of agreement with Federal Highway Administration's Eastern Federal Lands Division to advance design work for the Wawinet Road side path. Should I turn to Patrick? Good evening, Patrick.
Good evening. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. We can talk about this one if you'd like. I have a couple slides. I don't know how much time the select board wishes to spend on it, but I'm happy to provide a brief overview if it's helpful for folks at home. Whatever
Yeah,
your pleasure is.
I think brief.
Okay, excellent.
Maybe put up a slide or two.
Okay, I will share my screen here. And go into presentation mode. I can find it. Sorry for bumbling. Okay, so the requested action today is to review and accept a memorandum of agreement with Federal Highway Administration's Eastern Federal Lands Division, which will allow the town to proceed with initial designs for a Wawinet side path and also detailed roles and responsibilities for the side path project. You've seen this information before, but just as an overview for folks at home, this is essentially.
Oh, we just lost you.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Got fuzzy.
Is this better? Can you guys hear me okay now?
No.
Still problematic. Is this any better?
Oh, that's better. Yes.
Okay, I'll speak up a little bit. So again, there's some background on this one is that the town was awarded 2 federal land access program grants. And this is a program that is intended to support access to federal lands. And the town kind of took a utilitarian approach. It's had this Wawinet side path project on its books for a long time, as far back as the 1977 bike master plan for the town, but it's been continued in further plans, including our most recent long range plan. The town was awarded a design award in 2016. It's an 80-20 program, so there is 20% match that you see, roughly $200,000 of resource to the town to help design a path. And then in 2018, the town was awarded $1 million to help support construction. It's a little atypical here. Typically, you have a design in place and then you go seek construction funding. It was great that we were able to get construction funding award money for this particular project because we don't have a design yet. And then in this new cycle for this discretionary program, which rolls around every 2 to 3 years, we requested additional support for construction. And we haven't heard back yet, but that decision is pending. Again, there's no construction estimate here and there's no design done. I've had a lot of people come into the office or contact me and say, can I see the plans? I just want to be clear for everybody, there's no designs yet. We'll be starting designs if this agreement is signed by the town based on your acceptance today. The project is likely to be phased from Pulpus to Pocomo if it does proceed. So the initial process here would be to accept the memorandum of agreement, and that would allow the town to move forward with Federal Highway to develop 15% conceptual design alternatives. I want to stress that this is plural here, right? Alternatives. So there'll be a couple different items on the table for folks to look at and consider. And once these design alternatives are together, the MOA actually builds in some public outreach and coordination. So
I'm not sure if it's on your end or our end, but it's coming in and out.
Apologies. I'll do my best. And if you want to ask.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm not sure what's happening,
Okay.
but maybe just pause. Does the board have questions?
should he, I wonder if he should turn his Wi-Fi on and off or something. I don't know.
Or is it on our end?
Oh, it's
I'm
our
not
end. I
sure.
don't know.
It's on our end.
It's our end. Oh,
Yeah. Well, the information
Read the
is here. We
Yeah.
have it. So are there questions? Are there any questions from the public? Does anyone want to just move forward with a motion? Oh, yes, please come up to the mic if you'd like to speak.
Good evening.
Oh, just state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Tom Dixon. I am a resident at 15 Walwinet Road for over 40 years, and I'm here just to ask the Board of Select people to consider anything that I might be able to do as an individual, having been there for such a long time, or a comparatively long time. I think local knowledge is something that's going to be important, and I would be very much like to be involved if it's appropriate. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think, I'm fully in support of a bike path in that area. I think one of my questions for Patrick, if it was working, is, how many public meetings and, were they well attended? And were there any on site yet, even just preliminary? Because one thing that Rob did really well was when we were doing some of the sidewalks downtown, and okay, we messed up one sidewalk, but all the rest came out really well. And he pulled in a lot of the stakeholders and answered a lot of the questions and got their ideas. And it was much improved and much more accepted. And from all the letters we've gotten, there just seems to be a lot of sort of misunderstanding and misconceptions and, a lot of different things. And I think, as we, I support this, I'm going to vote for it. As we move it forward, I think we have to make sure that we know how we're going to pay for it, because the price keeps going up, and that we have full public process. So it's less, to get rid of some of this contentiousness and get rid of some of the misunderstanding, and to gain the input from some of the neighbors. A couple years ago, a couple of the Pocomo neighbors had contacted me, and I put them in contact with Andrew Vorse, and over at the planning, we didn't have transportation planner at the time, and they were offering to pay a good percentage of this. So this may be a great opportunity, because even though we're going to get $1.5 million or so, it's going to end up costing $6 million or more. This, for us to move this forward quickly and move it up the queue, it may be that there has to be some fundraising and some contributions like there was, to justify it, because this was, I don't know, number 8 or 10 on the priority list, and it's great that we're getting this money, and it's great that we're doing it, but if we can get more and get it done sooner, that would be great. And then I also want to make sure when we do it, that we have the capacity to do it, and it isn't something that sort of languishes. So I want to, we should get a real, commitment to when we do it, so that people, if they are fundraising, can say, hey, this is when it's starting and this is what's going to happen. This shouldn't be, and this shouldn't drag on for 10 years. It's too important, and I could say that for a lot of places, but it's too important here. And so, those are my, I'm voting for it, but let's make sure that we, sort of do this expeditiously.
Thank you, Matt. Mary Longacre has her hand up online.
Thank you, Don. Mary Longacre speaking as Chair of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. In case Patrick had intended to let you know, but is unable to, we've seen that there is a fundraising effort. There's been a fund established at the Community Foundation in support of this project. We've also received comments from positive comments from people in the neighborhood, as well as some negative comments, which you may already be aware of. So I just wanted to let you know that there is support for the project, and that, as Matt mentioned, there is an opportunity for the public, if they want to contribute financially towards its completion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
I just have one question. Some of the letters in opposition talked about environmental impact. Is that fact or just people's concern?
I can try to speak to this. Hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yes.
Let me know if not, or if I start fuzzing out. This project, again, has no design work done yet. There is anticipated environmental impact because the wetland proximity, which is very similar to how Pulpus was. There were some wetlands that had to be mitigated essentially with that project as well. It will have to be reviewed by Concom. So it'll go through that process once an alternative is actually selected. And the other thing too is that this, because it's a federal aid project, is required to go through the National Environmental Policy Act review. And that will require an evaluation of different alternatives, including a no-build alternative, so that the public can be aware of environmental impacts. And that is just built into any federal aid project to ensure that, you know, people are very aware of what the impacts are, and so that mitigation can be determined appropriately should a build alternative proceed.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'm very much in favor of bike paths, getting people out of cars and onto bicycles. And the flurry of outreach from the community in the last 24 hours has been interesting to me. There's a lot of attention and a lot of history of this that I wasn't aware of, that members of the people in the neighborhood have made me aware of. So I'm prepared to move approval of this agreement.
Is there a second
Second.
on the motion? Do we want to take a public comment before we?
Sure.
Something simple. I think Matt touched on it. Once again, Tom Dixon, 15 Walwinet Road, that public hearings will be part of this process. Is that right? Just to be on record.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And my last suggestion is when we have public hearings, let's ensure that Concom and others come and take those walks and sort of point out some of the issues before the application's even there. I think the more we can look ahead and work around the issues the neighbors have, the Concom has, or anyone else does, the better chance we have to move this along quickly.
Thank you. Next, we have public hearings. We have a public hearing regarding proposed FY 2024 general fund budget. I will open the public hearing. Am I going to Brian?
I think we're just
Or we
taking public
just-
comment.
Okay.
We don't really have anything to add from prior presentations, just so the board knows. We went to the school committee last night and gave the presentation we gave to you on December 14th to them, and they didn't have too many questions. There was a bit of a question at the end about coastal resiliency planning, and that was about it.
Okay. Well, this is the opportunity for the public to speak on next year's budget. I don't see anyone in the audience or anyone online. So does anyone want to make a motion
Motion to close the public hearing?
Okay. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, are we ready to?
It would be
voting to-
helpful if the board would endorse the budget recommendations as proposed by town administration, and then authorize them to be forwarded to the finance committee.
Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Town managers report. Update on Baxter Road alternative access.
We have Bill Casey here of Arcadis to present the update on this, and he's going to take us through some slides that are in the packet.
Great. Can everybody hear and see me?
Bill, do you want me to share the screen? I mean, or are you planning on
No,
doing
it's okay. I can share it.
Okay.
Everybody can hear and see me okay?
Yes.
All right. Let's go. Yeah. Two. And here. Okay. Everybody see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Great. So this is a project update for alternative access and utility relocation for Baxter Road residents. The overall goal of the project is to really develop a shovel-ready construction documents that identify kind of a plan of retreat should erosion compromise existing Baxter Road and the public utilities contained therein. The overall approach is to identify this retreat option that is landward of the FEMA predicted 2050 erosion hazard area, and retreat by way of, and access by way of Sankaty Road. Just for recap of prior presentations. This is a list of anticipated topics for tonight. Go through. It's our project team that meets monthly and sometimes weekly. Of course, Libby Gibson is in person. I believe Vince is as well. Ken, I believe, is on Zoom, and my name is Bill Casey. I'm the project manager for Arcadis. So the more focused goals for tonight was really to provide the select board with an update on the project status. Really, we've developed a couple of different options. 3 of them are being presented tonight, and you've seen 2 of these options previously, and this goes into a little bit more detail. And ultimately, we'd like to get consensus from the select board on a preferred route so we can move forward into final design. The last time we presented was in October, and we've continued to have communication with the homeowners since then, primarily through email and Vince's efforts to provide notification of the fall field work program, generally in November and December. We've also submitted a draft basis of design memorandum. This was submitted to the town for review and comment. We plan to implement any town comments and finalize the memorandum within the next couple of weeks, so we can allow it to be uploaded on the town website. This memorandum contains pretty much the information that we're being presented here tonight, just in further detail and some technical specifics about water and sewer. As mentioned before, we did the field survey in November and early December for topography and property line surveys. We do expect that we'll probably need 1 to 2 days of data collection on a field, kind of a cleanup standpoint once all the data has been QC'd. We also performed wetland delineations in November and identified that really wetlands exist in the southern half of the project area. These wetlands will be identified on the construction documents, and any work planned near these wetlands will be permitted through the Conservation Commission, DEP. On the northern half of the area, we've identified it as a priority habitat for the endangered waxed sallow moth. Work in this area, of course, will require further review and permitting through the Conservation Commission and Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act Office. And lastly, we submitted a project notification to Mass Historic Commission, as it could be kind of submitted just as a general project area without identifying any specific routes. Here's our project schedule, which has been evolved since our contract. And we're here in the beginning of January, but we're really at a critical point of making a determination of a route, as it impacts really all the future aspects of work, particularly final design, and identifying exactly what needs to be permitted. So all the route options really have this similar theme in common. The utilities and access traverse to Sankaty Road, and then eventually travel down the Pulpus bike path and come across Bayberry and reconnect to existing utilities in Baxter and Bayberry. The real difference here is we've been measuring things in linear footage just for our perspective, to offer a perspective. And A and B are very similar, and C is the longest route. Through discussions between town staff and Arcadis, we are generally in favor of option B. But we'll start with option A, of course. The focus of today really is in the central, let me switch to a pointer. Does that work? Yeah, okay, great. So focus is generally in the center of the project area. As to the north, there's already a pre-negotiated existing memorandum of understanding for Baxter Road North residents. And the southern reaches of the project area is primarily the path to transport utilities, water and sewer into the existing infrastructure at the intersection of Baxter and Bayberry. So I'm just trying to see what would be the most efficient way to zoom in and allow you to see some of the differences here between these options. Focusing on the central region, here we've got a branch heading to the north and a branch heading to the south. These would be 2-lane roadways. We've got 100 Baxter, 111 Sankaty, a roadway between there that would pick up 104, 100, 98, 96, and traverse down to Sankaty Road. This is close proximity of area between 100 and 111. This does separate out 106 and 104. Both properties have a pool. On the 106 traverses across 108 and connects to the MOU area over here. Zooming back in. This also does provide a shared driveway, which would have been a maximum of 15 feet for 90 to 92 Baxter. These other roadways are 2-lane type of road for emergency access. And each pathway per town regulation of subdivision of land is 10 feet. So a total 20-foot path through there. The actual easement length, if you will, may be wider than that due to topography, allowing area for drainage and whatnot. Other aspects on this option, there's a outbuilding on 98 Baxter, which may need to be relocated. These areas, properties of really 100, 104, 106, 98 have all generally, just to generalize, have grass lawns and landscaping. Areas between 107, 111, this is more of native plantings through here, thickets, if you will, and undisturbed parcel at 115. This one is the overall, option A is the overall shortest length. And the lengths are measured basically linear footage for all the lines on the screen, if you will, at this level of detail. And this is really truly just using town's geographic information system, sketching on top of the existing aerial photography, and then calculating the lengths. Option A is very similar to option B in linear footage. Option B, focusing in again. This creates more of an access way for 100, 104, 106, 108, traveling north to the predetermined memorandum of understanding access way. This provides a pathway by an undisturbed parcel. This option does impact the privacy, if you will, of two pools, and depending on easements and negotiations, these pools may be in jeopardy unless the roadway or access way can be moved more towards Sankaty Road. This option does provide for smaller branches for 98, 96, shared driveway, a 15-foot max according to the town's rules and regulation. And similar, it shows a connection of a shared driveway for 90 and 92. This option does avoid the shed or outbuilding at number 98. So over here. Over to option C. Option C creates several shared driveway concepts, if you will. It does avoid swimming pools at 104 and 106. However, this does cause more disturbance of the native land, if you will, for traversing across an undisturbed parcel, as well as undisturbed between 107 and 111. This plan also does avoid the outbuilding at number 98. And we show a little bit of a slightly different access way for number 90 Baxter to traverse through the back of 86 and come back out onto Baxter Road. Whereas 92 would have their own driveway as they have access on both frontage on both Sankaty and Baxter Road. This does create the most amount of linear footage and thereby has the highest cost. Oops. Sorry about that. Next slide. There we go. Am I still sharing? Yes. Okay. So here's the overall cost options. Granted, this is a very, very high level. Whereas at the time, we did not have a field survey. We have not done any final design drawings, and everything was really based off of linear footage for access and utilities. The costs were based off of area calculations for paved roadways and paved bike path and non-paved access ways. It includes additive percentage estimates for contract overhead, profit, insurance, general conditions, and accounts for inflation. And the estimate does also include land acquisitions and legal fees. You can see at this level, we're 15%, which the Association of Advanced Cost Engineering recommends a contingency of a minus 30% low to a plus 50% high. And that's what these numbers underneath are portraying. Upcoming work items, a lot is dependent upon route selection. That'll allow us to really focus into the permitting as well as development of shovel-ready construction documents. Do we have any discussions, comments from the board? I understand they will be opened up.
Board questions?
Or just comments. My understanding was we were doing survey work and going to still talk to the neighbors and come back. So is the survey work, field work completed?
The survey work, I would say is 85, 90% completed from a field aspect. We received some preliminary, I guess, mapping from the survey crew. I believe it was towards the end of last week. We'll be QCing that, seeing if they missed any shots, if we need any additional information of topography, utilities, anything else that's existing in the area. And I suspect they'll have a 1 to 2 day cleanup or more survey, just data collection. And I'll make sure that Vincent is notified and then in turn notifies the residents if anybody's going to be back out in the field.
Right, I don't want to be picking one now, we probably won't pick it tonight, but don't want to pick one in January January, February, if then we go do some more work and find out it won't work. And so that's, so anyway, that should be number one. Number two, the other comment, these are all 20, so the roads coming in are 20 feet. Is this all tar?
No. The guidance that we have is through the town regs, which both the paved option and the gravel option in the details in the town regulations both show a travel way of 10 feet per lane. And it has never been the intention in these areas to have paved roads other than there's a paved section that's been planned in the northern reach of the MOU. And then any travel, any utility work along the existing bike path, which is paved, would be repaved. And then traversing down across Bayberry back into Baxter would be paved as well.
Right, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, because the bid is pretty high. I want to make, we're talking 20 feet, I think. These are almost, even if it's serving 5 or 6 houses, they're almost shared driveways. These are not going to be well-traveled ways. I don't, my own opinion, it should mimic what's out in Sconset now with the, with shell driveways and small roads that are shared to these houses. It should feel and look like that. I don't think it, in my opinion, we should make, and we still can get trucks down there. It doesn't have to, we can make sure the plantings are not, encroaching on it, et cetera. But I think we have to make sure that it fits out there and is, in keeping, and so that's one sort of comment.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to follow up a tiny bit on the earlier comment of getting the survey work done before picking an option. I don't know that any additional survey work will change any of the options. Bill could maybe speak to that, but Vince has spoken with many of the abutters.
All right, well, if that won't, then that's great. And that's.
I'd want Bill to confirm that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. The survey work will help us really hone in the exact location of the pipes, the real radius of any turns that are required along the route. But from a route selection standpoint, there's really, it's more of I wouldn't say it's a technical decision, maybe a bit of a preference, maybe a neighborhood decision, with a little bit of a cost component to it.
I frankly would defer to the group that's been looking at this and the engineers to decide on the best option, which right now they prefer B, but there maybe could be some alterations depending on land acquisitions and so forth. And I agree that these should be kept as much like residential driveways and lowest cost possible, because when you look at the projections, we're already in 2023. The green line is 2030. That's going to come up really fast. And then by 2050, unfortunately, it looks like these houses will be gone if there's no protection that we're providing access to. So just some things to think about in terms of spending $30+ million. There's some public comments. If there's, Brooke, go ahead.
I'm curious if through you, Bill, could elaborate on why option B is appealing to the people who've been working on this day to day, and then also just to get a sense of input, whether that preference also takes into account input from the affected property owners.
Well,
Bill?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. And so I put option B back on the screen, I believe. Let me just get to so really option B puts a lot of the access by an undisturbed parcel. And really limits the amount of encroachment that could be seen on somebody's privacy, if you will. Option A went right through this area, which is very close proximity between 100 and 111. Option B does put a majority of this access way across an undisturbed parcel at the boundary of it, if you will. This also does plan for 2 shared driveway options, which are smaller. And then as compared to option A, there was really no identifiable cost difference between those 2 options. If that's helpful.
Thank you. Shall I go to the public comments or?
If I can just follow up.
Yeah.
The other part of my question was, did the input from the property owners affect, I mean, I realize there's your engineering decision, but is there a preference from property owners that leans toward option B at this point?
I would not necessarily speak that all property owners agree with any particular option. Vince could elaborate a little bit more, but certainly many property owners have voiced their opinions. We've had certain meetings along the way, and as you can imagine, everyone does have a slightly different opinion.
Right. Vince just came up to the mic.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So there's 3 options, and it is fair to say that the third option, option B, was to address some of the concerns that were brought in by property owners that there might be too much traffic on some routes. That's why C was brought in, more smaller shared drives. I have to say that roundly, that one seems to be disliked by most, is a fair assessment. It then kind of breaks into different neighbor groupings about who prefers option A and who prefers option B. And it is extremely fair to say there is no consensus, which is the one thing that I've been looking for most. So when we looked at them, option A has a lot of people going south, and option A has most people going north. And in terms of how that would work in practice and have small little driveways, I know Matt said shell driveways when we talked to the people in the area. There was no appetite for shell driveways. They wanted dirt tracks effectively that looked like the rest of the area, just like Matt said. But looking at option B in particular, it just had some minor advantages, and it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other. And in terms of who it serves and the distances between 110 Baxter and 111 Sankaty was one of the kind of helpful parts, because it is very tight there because of land layouts in that area. And if we had even a minor potential to use part of 111 Sankaty, it could alleviate some of the pressures on the people who own 104 and 106 potentially. But this is the stuff that has to be negotiated out and has been talked about, but there is no agreement on. So it's minor, but option B has some of the better components that might serve the whole community for longevity.
Thank you, Vince. Okay. I'm going to go to Sani Judy.
Here's on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for hearing me. I appreciate it. We appreciate the chance to be heard on behalf of our home at 108 Baxter. And I thank Vince Murphy for his work on these 2 terrible problems simultaneously. I'm sorry for a rough presentation, but this is very technically challenging, and an emotional thing, and we're reacting to news and kind of surprising conclusions that we weren't told to expect. But a decision might be imminent tonight, and that a favorite has already been chosen, and that's news to us. So I can only speak from a perspective of 108 Baxter, except when I talk about our immediate neighbors at 110 and 106 Baxter, who have expressed a strong desire to work with us to solve the problem, at least in our corner and our share of the problem. We're strongly in favor of option A and strongly against option B. And so I'm hoping very much, with new questions arising still, that you can postpone any kind of final decision, because this is so far from a settled matter, and I've seen so many questions in our CADIS report that I think require some further clarification.
Okay.
I am looking at what to me, I don't understand why option B is so much preferable. Option A keeps the driveway that goes through a pinch point or a proximity between the two buildings, 110 Baxter and 108, are exactly the same distance from each other as are the two buildings that you cite as an issue at the south end. And I don't understand why it's preferable to put even more residences through our yard, literally through our yard. They don't stay at the perimeter. They will cross our front yard, bisect the lot, and travel our driveway quite close to the house. And I can't call it a driveway if it's 6, 7 homes. So I'm trying to understand how one pinch point is acceptable and the other one is not, or has the surveyor determined the distance between those two dwellings? Because by our casual estimate, survey plus tape measure, they are the same. And this little group of homes did exactly what the town asked for, which was to work with each other to try to solve a problem. 108 Baxter actually has an option to self-cure. So we don't need to participate in this new route, but there were reasons why it was attractive. And we were interested in solving our neighbors' problems, even though it wasn't ideal for us. And so we did that, and we got 2 people on board, and we have a solution for 4 dwellings. And the idea that that is going to be rewarded, that is not going to be rewarded by saying, yes, you did your share. Nobody else is doing more to solve this problem than you are. That's disheartening, that in the extreme. I also don't see the logic of moving traffic north into the golf course MOU road in option B any more than we have to, because that's already congested with lighthouse traffic, with those abutters, and the intersection meets the golf course intersection. The golf course doesn't want more people making noise on their easement. I don't see the advantage of moving 2 more properties north, or 2 plus, and whatever other properties are behind them that aren't clearly marked on the option B map. So to keep it to 4, to keep it a Sconset driveway, I think 4 is already pushing the limits of what would feel like a casual, safe road that doesn't require a lot of, passing tractor trailers with difficulty, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand why the engineers feel it's preferable. There will be a lot of native plantings lifted also in the in the option B version when it comes to the 115 Baxter, 115 Sanctity lot and 108 Baxter and possibly 110 Baxter. So
Okay.
I would like to see some calculations on why, on balance, more native plantings are protected in one scheme or another, if that's really an important factor, or was that just kind of a
No,
side?
those are all good points. I'm just, I have a number of hands up, so
Okay.
I'm just going to
Okay.
ask if you
I
could
just-
wrap
I
up.
wanna see- I want to see more discussion, and I'm begging for more time to resolve some actual factual questions, and yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I have someone at the
My
mic.
sister Carol Cronin is one of the Zoom. If we go to her, that would be good, and then I can follow her.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, she took her hand down.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, if you want to go first, and
Okay.
then I'll go back to
Is
the
she
people
gonna come
online.
back, though? Because
Probably.
otherwise I have a statement for her.
Oh, well, go
So-
if you want to go ahead and read both. I'm
Well,
just
I
going to
thought-
ask to try and keep them concise and not repetitive. If you agree with stuff that's already been said.
Yeah, I would, if she went, then I wouldn't have to repeat her. Do you know what I mean? But you want me to go?
Well, she doesn't have her hand up now.
Okay. How's the volume? Can you hear me?
Oh, she didn't.
Oh, she does?
Well, no, it's down
The
again.
more we can do here, we're having trouble with the people not here. So the more we can do here,
Okay.
the better chance the public will hear it.
Great. So this is a prepared statement, which I request to be read into the record. Good evening. My name is Hannah Judy, legal last name Gretz. I live at 111 Sankaty Road, which is impacted by all three of the options before you. My son, who is here tonight, also lives at 111 Sankaty Road, works at the NHA. I'm a part-time town employee. I teach fitness classes at Saltmarsh Senior Center and have since 2017. I plan to live the rest of my life on this island, and I suspect my son will do the same. 111 Sankaty Road is the only house north of Bayberry Road and east of Sankaty Road on either Sankaty or Baxter roads that is occupied continuously, full-time, 12 months of the year. As a result of the town's needing to relocate Baxter Road, all three of the options before you show a road going across my entire front yard to serve Baxter Road residents. Needless to say, that alone will be enough to disturb the peace, quiet, privacy, natural view, etc., that now 4 generations of my family have enjoyed. We read on our front porch in the afternoon sun. That is the view from the second floor table where we eat and write and work. When I stepped out of our outdoor shower just before Thanksgiving to dry off, I thought, oh my, there's going to be a road right across there. There's also a beautiful stand of native tupelos that straddles the same property line shown where the proposed road is now drawn between 111 Baxter Road and 107 Baxter Road. That's the only stand of tupelos I've identified north of the village and east of Sankaty Road. It would be a shame to destroy them. I've been watching them grow for almost 50 years, so replacing them is not a quick fix. Plus, they provide some natural screening for the proposed roadway. Nonetheless, much as I hate the thought of a road across our front yard and how that will change life as we have known it for almost 50 years, I am here to advocate for option B, because at least option B adds a road along only one additional side of our property, the south side. We already have Sankaty Road on the west side. Option A, on the other hand, would add 2 roads along 2 additional sides of our property, the south side and the east side. The option A map shows that the proposed road bordering our east side would be entirely contained within the 2 adjacent Baxter Road yards. It's appropriate that the Baxter Road properties that need relief provide their own land to get it, and yet I'm skeptical that that will actually be possible. The town can't tell us yet the exact path that some of the roads shown on the maps will take, so we can't really know at this time the true impact of a choice that needs to be made now. One quick example. 100 Baxter Road has a large detached garage with an apartment above it. I don't think it's mentioned in your documents, but it sure looks to me like a 20-foot wide road is not going to fit between the side of that building and our property line. My guess is the proposed road, at least in that section of our side yard, as well as across, is going to come out of our land. And that's just one example. Even if the option A road along our east side is located entirely within the Baxter Road yards as shown, it still puts a road 45 feet away from the deck where my toddler granddaughter plays all summer. It still subjects 3 first-floor bedrooms on the east side of our house to noise and headlights and loss of privacy. And of course, option A would still add 3 additional dwellings worth of traffic to the mix and would cause the proposed front yard roadway to increase in width. The 2 new roads shown in option A would bring 5 dwellings worth of cars, trucks, vans, FedEx, UPS, you get the picture, traveling around 2 extra sides of our Sankaty Road property. Option A would cause our property to be surrounded by roads on 3 sides. My sister Carol Cronin will speak to you about our family opposition to option C, but just note additionally that from the perspective of 111 Sankaty Road, option C would also put 2 additional roads around 111 Sankaty Road, just like option A. In option C, the proposed roads would be on the north and south sides of our property. Once again, 111 Sankaty Road would be surrounded by roads on 3 sides. In conclusion, virtually all of the Baxter Road residences involved here that now require access have been purchased or built since the Bluff erosion problems were well known. The Baxter Road residents have a problem which was expected. The town has a problem that perhaps was not expected, purely as a result of our geographical location, my family's life of nearly 50 years, the property that has been home to 4 generations of our family so far is going to be quite changed. We are willing to be part of the solution to the problem of Baxter Road, but I ask that the impact to our Sankaty Road property be as minimal as possible. Therefore, I ask that you give strong consideration to option B, as it, at least, only impacts one side of our property. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'll go to Elizabeth Grubbs next.
Thank you. This is Betsy Grubbs with the Sconset Trust, and I would just like a little clarification on the public access to the lighthouse, including parking for people with special needs. I haven't seen that addressed and would love some clarification on that. Thank you.
Could someone elaborate on the lighthouse access and parking? Vince?
Thank you. Either I can do it or Bill can do it, but if Bill could, or somebody could put an image on screen that shows the northern end of this area.
Yeah.
There has been thank you, Bill. There has been a plan in place since 2018 to have vehicle parking just off of Sankaty Road on what is currently property owned by the golf club that would end with, I think it's 6 parking spaces in a turnaround area. Then that would be there. From there, it would be walking access to the lighthouse via the back of 110 through 120, I think.
I think she was also asking about handicapped access. Will the path be wheelchair accessible?
I should imagine so. I couldn't see how it wouldn't be.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Sarah Ellis. Then we'll go to John Hoops.
This is actually Lynn Madison. I'm on my husband's
Okay, thank
thing,
you.
but I'm speaking for for the Madison family at 106 Baxter Road. I think we're unique in that we have already moved our house twice due to erosion. We've owned the house since 1968. It was originally located on the east side of Baxter Road and has moved twice because of erosion. And therefore we've lost approximately 200 feet previously from the Bluff side. So we're familiar with this problem. We'd like to make two comments to start with. First, we're very disappointed about the GO2 project, which I know you'll be talking about next, which appears to be ending. The impact of further erosion after removal of the geotubes will only hasten this irreparable loss to the bluff and speed up the need for this project. We're concerned that some things need to be figured out before this project goes forward. In our opinion, the option A is the least disruptive to our property and represents an effective approach to providing access to 106, 108, and 110. It's a simpler layout and it preserves the integrity of the properties. Compared to options B, C, and A, option A appears to be more likely to preserve the intended purpose of the alternative access as private ways for residents, much like was being discussed, mimicking more driveways versus a drive-through all along an alternate access. Living up there on the bluff, you have no idea how many people walk, ride their bikes, and are up there all the time. I don't want another road going back behind that becomes an alternate in that way. I don't know. In addition, we're surprised to learn that the proposed Plan B includes some impact on the swimming pool on our property. This has been a pool that has been an important medically prescribed physical therapy regime for members of our family, and we really object to any disruptions on this. But however, despite our feeling that option A is best as presented, we're concerned that significant questions remain and have not been fully discussed with the abutters. In particular, we've not been informed about any of the potential costs to abutters related to these options. It's difficult to consider these options or their implications without an overview of costs and impacts. So in summary, I'm asking that the select board take the following actions: that you delay the implementation of the geotube removal to forestall accelerated erosion through lack of their protection and to mitigate potential weakening of the bluff caused by removal of the geotubes. I'd also ask that Arcadis and the Baxter Road Alternative Access Project to clarify, prior to selection of any of these alternative access options, what the potential impacts and costs to abutters might be. Abutters need this information to knowledgeably collaborate with each other and with you, the select board. Thank you very much for consideration.
Thank you. Molly Ryan.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Molly Ryan. I have been coming to Nantucket since 1980. I've been a resident of Baxter Road as a renter or an owner since 1991. So I am not a newbie. I live at 110 Baxter Road. And I agree with my neighbors, the Judys, and 106, that option A seems to be the most carefully planned option for access to maintain the character of our neighborhood. And I really hope that you take that into consideration. And I also need to acknowledge that regardless of people living there full-time or part-time, we all love the island, we all love the neighborhood, and we're all paying the same amount of taxes for the same amount of services. So I feel very strongly that option A is in our best interest as residents of the street. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got 3 more hands up and then we'll come to an end. John Judy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm John Judy. I live at 108 Baxter Road, and happily so. And I'm sorry about all this trouble that we're having with the GO2 problem and the need to make these changes. And I support completely the option A, which I call the two shared driveway plan. Up our way, that is to say 6, 8, and 10 Baxter, we have done what we were asked to do by the town, and that is to come together and have a plan where we can participate with the town and get this done. And we are doing this in a way where we preserve really the open space that's just to the south of us, and we preserve our neighbors' privacy with their lots and their swimming pools. And if you look from a Google map from above, you can see that the geography naturally favors option A. And we've built a coalition, and I don't know what's going to happen. I think we've all committed to getting along and making this happen and working with the town to succeed on this. However, we are full up. We have 4 dwellings on a driveway going north right next to my building. And this is, in my view, already a very big ask. And I think adding any more traffic coming to the north is going to be very problematic for both 110 and 108. And I think the cooperation that we intend to have with the town might be, there might be problems. And we don't want that. We really don't want that. And what I am hopeful of is that what we have done, 106, 108, 110, will be a model for all our neighbors going south, because this problem is not going away, and these decisions have to be made. And what I call the shared driveway plans are the ones we should be focusing on. And so I'm urging all our neighbors to realize and look at what we've done. We're the poster neighbors for how you solve this problem. You solve it by agreeing to compromise and working with the town and not trying to have a conflict and not hiring lawyers and not getting in trouble and not losing sleep and not any of that. And that's why the shared driveway plan, which is what option A is in my view, the correct approach forward. And I think you should recognize that it's a fragile thing. And we're full up with the 4 dwellings, the 3 houses, using a road that runs, well, if you say it's going to be 20 feet, it's going to run very close to my building. I mean, very close. And as I've said, as someone else said, the distance between the 108 building and the 110 building is 80 feet. And I think the distance between the 111 Sankey building and the 100 Baxter building is 80 feet or thereabouts, very close. And so the privacy for the 108 residents, whoever that may be, is extremely compromised, even in the 4 dwelling model, which is what option A is. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. And I'm sure we all agree that we're very sorry about everything that's happening there. Sarah Ellis.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my comment. I guess I just have a concern, which is just to go back to the beginning of this presentation on this agenda item. It seems like there's so many valid opinions, of course, and different entities, but why we're having the discussion at this point is concerning to me. It seems like there wasn't any outreach
done in the community of Sconset and that surrounding area. If yes, abutters or landowners, but to have people like the Sconset Trust not knowing about handicap access, to people not even knowing that an option has been promoted, which it was. It just concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Elizabeth Grubbs with one final comment.
Thank you. My final comment, be cognizant of how we can get to the lighthouse, and it does include vehicular light traffic because we need people up there to make repairs. We've just had a crew, thanks to the generosity of the CPC, there for almost 3 months. So we just want to be sure all the thousands of visitors and the people who need to maintain the lighthouse have access when all of this is planned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can talk to that quickly. That was envisioned in the earlier MOU. There'll be, bus, workers can get there to deal with the lighthouse. Originally it was, if you look at the map, it's, what am I on? I'm on A. You can see there's a red line on the front because we were thinking the breach was going to be sort of just below the red line there. And so that plan was drawn in case that happened to originally go on Baxter Road itself, but then eventually go back behind where the sort of the fork is on A, that was the shared driveway going off to the left. And so that would still be there. I mean, it's not gonna, that's still there. I think the comment about the neighbors working together, I think the northern neighbors are a, very good example. And I hope that is how it goes everywhere here, because, no one, I think, got exactly what they wanted, but they did work together and come up to something that, sort of Sconset Trust signed off on, the select board and those neighbors all signed off on. So I hope that, that does stand as an example, sort of for everybody, that it's going to be difficult. One thought I had, what I do on my employee housing is on Fairgrounds. I have 3 lots. I have about 1.5 acres. And instead of cutting in 3 driveways, I have a shared parking area for 10 or 12 cars. And then I have paths off to the, 5, 6 cottages that I have there. And that was to avoid the vehicles and avoid that. So if that's something, I'm just throwing that out as an idea for like yourselves or some other, some of the other areas, maybe there's a way where there could be a shorter road and a parking area with paths for everybody, as opposed to everyone driving right to their door. I don't know that it would work, but it's something that is something to think about anyway. So
I think she never put her hand up.
She said it's on there.
Oh, well,
She's not sure it's being seen.
how do we get her hand up if it's not showing? Oh, yeah. Okay. Just allow Carol Cronin. Yeah.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Sorry about
Yes.
the technical issues. I'm not sure what's going on.
Go ahead.
Just very briefly, I'm a co-trustee of the property at 115 Sankaty Road, that lovely empty lot that's in your pictures. We have consistently communicated to the town over this past year that the co-trustee property owners, which includes me and Hannah, my sister Hannah, of this undeveloped lot, and the great majority of the extended multi-generational Judy family vigorously opposes option C as presented tonight. I think you heard a little bit about that from Vince. The creation of any roadway or driveway that traverses, bisects, or otherwise separated that Sankaty Road empty lot, we are in strong opposition. That parcel of land is a key part of a 50-year long-term multi-generational thinking, and any disruption could lead to significant family harm. In the meantime, this beautiful undeveloped lot should be left in its natural state without any roads or driveways running through it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm not feeling equipped to make a decision tonight. I feel that further discussion and negotiation needs to be had with all of the neighbors, because there can be tweaks to all of the options. I also think that we need to have further identify where the money is coming from. Are we going to town meeting? Are we doing betterments? Are we doing a combination thereof? I mean, I think we do need to talk about these things at some point, because regardless of what option we pick, implementation requires the dollars that go with it.
I think the reality is that it's going to most likely be a mix of taxpayer money and betterments. We've been talking about whether there might be grants available, and there may be at some point, but they're going to serve as a very minimal offset, most likely, to the overall cost. It's going to be an expensive undertaking, no
And
matter
this
what option.
Yeah, when we talk about this all the time, and I always talk about how state law hasn't caught up with the reality of climate change and what's happening. There's requirements that the town provide utilities and access, et cetera. And they don't, it doesn't say you don't have to do it if it costs a lot of money, unfortunately. And it says we have to do it, and it doesn't say you have to do it, but even if it only lasts 5 years or 10 years. So I think that was, that's part of what we're dealing with, is the state rules haven't sort of caught up with what all of us are going to be facing. It's also why we work so hard to try to look at this from a big picture perspective and gain some time here, in my opinion. Because I think, look at these numbers, it's what, $35 million for this. That's not insignificant. And whenever I talked about Sheep's Pond Road, that was, I think $1.2 million, $1.8 million. It didn't have sewer in the water. It had water. It all had wells, so the town didn't have to change those. It had no sewer, and so it's sort of, all we had to do was move. Not all, but the only thing that had to move was electric wires, and you could grade the new road. This is a whole different ballgame, and I think, that is one of the difficulties when you look at the entire picture and how are you going to handle it. It's not Baxter, Sheep's Pond was a few houses and a few roads, and this is a whole different animal. So
Yeah, it's completely different situation. Depending on how the outcome of your next agenda item eventually pans out or not, what we've been hearing from off and on from the Conservation Commission is, why don't you get alternative access into place for Baxter Road, and then we don't need to worry about erosion control measures. So we're kind of being battered by all sides here. We need to get an alternative access underway, in place, funded, agreed on, all of that. And it's not a simple project. Like Matt said, it's not just installing these roadways. There's utilities and other things that have to be installed, relocated.
I would certainly feel more comfortable if we had a well-publicized agenda item when we will make a decision about this. This was on as an update, and I think some people have expressed they weren't clear that this was a decision point for this board to choose an option, so I'm not prepared to do that tonight. And I think to their point about what are the costs going to be to them, and I realize you have to start somewhere. You can't figure out the costs until you choose a path. So it's a bit of a catch-22 here. But I would be uncomfortable making a decision tonight about one option over the other. I think one more round of public comment on this is certainly warranted.
Yeah, I would agree, and have it be a little bit more clear in the wording that that it's a decision time. I mean, what I have heard is that no one said they liked option C. So it's really option A and B, and I don't know if there's any way to meld those two to try and address more of the concerns, because there seems to
I
be
agree with
kind of
everything that's been
vehement.
said. I think, but I want to make sure we make a decision relatively soon. I think we need a more formal public hearing. I agree what the costs are, but let's do it soon. Because all of a sudden, we're going to have to do it.
Yes, and if we're going to go to town meeting, I mean, thankfully we have a fall town meeting, because I think we're too late for this year's annual. But that was going to come up really fast too.
The other issue that Don brought up earlier, I want, while people are looking at these maps and thinking about it, you know, you look at the 2030, 2050 lines, 2010 lines, you know, this, even when we start this isn't going to happen in a year or two. You know, this is going to take some time. If everything goes as quick as you can, there's still takings and town meeting and engineering, and there's a lot that has to go on with this. And so, yeah, sort of, I look and so that's where the cost is important. And then you start looking, saying if this is going to be 5-year, 7-year, and then these are gone, a lot of these are gone anyway. What's happening now? We have more control because we have ownership of the beach. We have ownership physically of a portion of the beach. We have a license and we have more control. What will happen when that goes away, when that accretes and is gone, erodes and is gone, then the homeowners will own the property. So even if once it gets past the line, then they own it. Even if it accretes, they still own it. And so they're going to start applying individually for various items, because they're going to own, potentially they're going to own part of the bluff. Now, maybe it won't, maybe not exactly, because it's depending on the angle, but we're going to be seeing things individually, one at a time. And that's very difficult, or the Concom will be seeing it one at a time. That's very difficult to, sort of make a plan that way. I think, hopefully we can look at this holistically and look at the entire area, sort of like the land bank did down on Washington Street. And when you guys see that, it was really well done. And like we've tried to do with Arcadis. So I think another round of working with each other and trying to figure it out, and then really getting the numbers and deciding what's feasible and what makes sense for a 10-year, and so.
Okay. I think we're all on the same page, so we'll bring this back. Moving on to the next SBPF part, or Sconset Bluff part, update on notice of intent application to Conservation Commission for Sconset Bluff Erosion Control Project.
So just a little bit of an intro about this. As the board knows, we received a letter earlier in the week from the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, co-applicant with the board for the Sconset Bluff Erosion Control Project, and an associated notice of intent application with the Conservation Commission to expand and modify the project. And now we know that SBPF is basically withdrawing from the project entirely. So the board will need to determine whether or not to withdraw the notice of intent application for the Conservation Commission. And concurrently, there is a current enforcement order, as I think you all know, issued by the Conservation Commission to remove the erosion control project, plans for which are being prepared by SBPF, which is obligated to undertake removal. Because the consequences of removal are unknown, town staff has started to review initial preparations for the potential need to implement alternate access at a specific section of Baxter Road, which is contained in an existing memorandum of understanding with certain abutters should the road fail in a certain section and other triggers that would have to be met in order for that alternative access to be constructed. So we're taking a look at what that is exactly going to take sooner rather than later. We also have talked internally quite a bit about the possibility of a joint workshop between the board and the Conservation Commission facilitated by Arcadis to discuss potential ways of erosion control while the planning for the alternative access that you just heard about continues. So it's a complex situation, and I don't know exactly what the path forward here is, but our thinking is that it's probably, hopefully, really time for the two boards to get together and review, I guess, realistic options for erosion control measures to buy us time, as we've been discussing for a couple of years now, for the alternative access plans to be completed. And you can see tonight, that's a tip of the iceberg, what we saw tonight about how complicated that is.
Okay. I mean, I would imagine that the workshop is probably the next step. I don't know that we should withdraw the application yet, or whether we should alter the application to talk about keeping the existing structure in place. I don't know how we're going to fund it. So I have a lot of questions, but I think that there does have to be some kind of action taken, at least in an interim, because in the way that things move with all of the things that need to be moved for the alternative access, I mean, I think we're talking 5 years potentially to get everything in place. I mean, I've worked on bike path easements and utility easements and so forth, and it takes a long time to get all that stuff in order. And then get all of the different pieces of it actually done.
That supposes that everyone is cooperative and there isn't any legal holdups or any other things that can trip us up. So we had some threats at Sconset Casino this summer that from some of the homeowners. That wasn't the people here tonight, and they were, people are trying to work together, but we did have, we had some threats, and so some things are gonna, potentially be difficult. I don't know, we don't know what and how, or, but it's been that way all along. And I think what we need is a decision tree of what are our paths and what is the, exposure to the town, financial, legal, and the costs for the 1 or 2 or 3 paths. I think we have to figure out, and that's what I know Libby's working on that. I've discussed it with her and Vince. That's kind of what needs to happen for us to have, sort of make a decision. And I think the conversation with the conservation, Concom is an important part of sort of that path. How do we do area planning, and how do we, do something like this in a ecologically sensitive way? And that was the goal that we had, but I think that's what we need to figure out. And if they're gonna say, well, the town has to put the sand on, you're the owner now, you own it, and you're gonna put the sand on, and that's $2 million a year for the next 5 years, that's $10 million. There you go, town, and then start building the road. I mean, there's things like that we face, and we need to put that all. There's too much of it to do on the top of our heads on a Wednesday night, but we need to put that, and some of it is Arcadis has done some of the work. Some of it's in the packet again tonight. We need to do that and then have an informed discussion, and the public needs to know it. I think, I've brought it up here, and Libby has, and other people have, but we need to, I'll speak for myself. I think I've meant to boil it down into a few bullet points and make it easy to understand, and I haven't, and I apologize for that, but I think that is what we're going to need to do, so that whatever choices we end up making are completely understood. So anyway, thank you.
Are we suggesting we take over the tubes or supply the sand? I don't see that happening.
I mean, that's the question, is do we need to do we need to take some kind of action to maintain them for the short term?
I think it would be going down a hole. I think it's time to push the alternate design.
I think the big question is what project would be maintained if there is an enforcement order requiring removal? And so would the Conservation Commission agree to the town maintaining the project going forward? Never mind the fact that we do not in any way, shape, or form have the resources for that today.
Exactly.
And that's financial and man capacity. Man power.
Did you want to add to that, Vince? Or
Yes, please, if that's all right. I think it's probably valuable to explain a few things to the board about the existing conditions of the site as it stands today, and both within the geotube zone and outside of it. So I undertake regular measuring in this area after storms, and usually about once a month, just to keep an eye on it. Been doing this for about 1.5 years now at this point. So the geotubes themselves, where they sit, they're between 35 and about 65 feet from the edge of the road to the edge of the bluff. Then that's the protected area. But the geotubes only cover 947 odd feet, that's it. Then once you look outside of that into the broader area, north and south, there's areas to the north that are only 35 feet. I say that a lot here. That's unprotected feet and is eroding and shrinking. So that if the town were to take over the geotubes, we're still stuck with the same question. What about the unprotected areas? How are we going to look after those? And they're eroding and retreating and getting closer to the 25-foot trigger that may necessitate the checking if the road is stable and if the road should stay open or not. So there's another massive problem. We don't have the capacity to look after the existing geotubes. How can we even have the capacity, the time, the money, the people to expand to protect the areas that are currently shrinking? Protecting the geotubes or the town taking over the geotubes, I don't think is feasible, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's all been said. I just could not support us continuing with the tubes at this point.
Nor do I, but some of this is going to depend on what happens with the Concom. Some of it's may end up depending on litigation. If some of these homeowners may say, we've got previous agreements that people may want to argue or not. We didn't uphold our end on, and there's been threats of those at other times. I hope that isn't the case. And so, and there, and anyone can file anything, and then it takes as long as it takes. And so, so we've got various avenues of exposure here, and we may end up being forced to do things that we don't even want to do, and up to and including maintaining this until something happens. So, the state doesn't make this easy, is my understanding. Vicky is still here. Someone can explain how that works, but.
Wait,
I was just, go ahead, Vicky.
Actually is here handling, George is here.
George?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I also had a question. Have we actually had the money deposited that's the right amount of funding for the removal? And how long is it even going to take to find a contractor who would do the removal?
To answer the first part of the question, yes, we have the estimated removal cost. It's $500,000. That includes $150,000 that's been in place since about 2013, that kind of time. And the brief time before the submission deadline for the NOI, we got an additional check for $350,000 that went to Finance Department to allow us to accept that the condition had been met as put out by the Select Board, that we could then proceed with the NOI submission. So there's a total of $500,000 in place for removal.
I thought the estimate was higher than that.
It's just a fraction under $500,000. It's 496, but
Okay.
there's now around 500,000, exactly
Okay.
500,000 in place.
Okay, what about finding someone to actually do the job? Have we investigated that at all?
Per the amended order of conditions that SBPF have, they're responsible for that. We just have the money to pay for it if they were to not undertake that.
Right, but that's what I'm wondering, are they?
So they're working with a company that is going to be presenting tomorrow night at the Conservation Commission about the removal. That is something that is currently being actively followed.
Okay, thank you. Brooke?
So I'd be interested in, I don't think it makes any sense for the Concom to spend any time on the NOI while we figure out whether we're going to continue with it. And I don't know, I'm just not familiar with procedures or whether there's a way to put that on hold to give us a little time to sort out what our options are. And then also an assessment of risk, as it were. I mean, some of this is in the Arcadis report about the benefits of the geotubes and in terms of buying time and what is the value to us of buying time? I don't want to maintain them either, but there may be some value in doing so in terms of mitigating legal risk and mitigating other risks. And I guess I don't have a good sense of a cost benefit analysis of the different options that we have. And I think Matt's use of the word decision tree is a good one. I don't know where the time comes from to create that.
So I can't answer the second question at all, not even close. No idea, simple as that. But the first question about procedure, I can give you an outline of. So the notice of intent was jointly submitted by SBPF and the town through the agreement of the select board. So that was a joint submission. The letter that came on Monday pretty clearly lays out the intent of SBPF. It might be a little bit questionable if there was an actual request to the select board to withdraw. They requested that potentially the town may take it over, but there was no request to stop. But they're just saying they're stopping effectively.
So it's done.
So the question is, if it's a joint submission, then jointly the town and SBPF would have to go to Concom to jointly withdraw. So that could either happen tomorrow night, it could happen in a couple of weeks. Tomorrow night is basically, I don't know that there's going to be any discussion of the NOI. It could come up, obviously. It was on the agenda. No, it's not on the agenda, actually. Correct myself. It's not on the agenda for tomorrow night. So maybe the regular Concom meeting tomorrow week will be the first opportunity to have both parties go to officially withdraw. But that would require the select board's agreement to withdraw from that. The other option, and it is an option, I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, is just to continue and don't present the NOI until we decide what way to go. I don't know that that's a good idea because all of the work has been undertaken by SBPF's consultants. We have no contracts, we have no way of working with them as it exists today. So I don't know how we could even begin to start taking over this notice of intent.
Okay, I do have a couple of hands raised. Oh, George, did you want to make some comments?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is George Pucci from KP Law, Nantucket Town Council. As you know, my usual method is to speak when spoken to, but I did raise my hand because I think, just a little bit of clarity would be helpful for the board about what's exactly before you tonight. And also to follow up on questions that came up from some of the board members, including Brooke's question just now about procedure. So of immediate concern before you tonight, if not tonight, at a reasonably prompt rescheduled select board meeting, you're left with two issues with SBPF's notice that they're so-called withdrawing from everything. They have contractual obligations with the town, so they don't get to just walk away. And you have a license agreement with them with indemnification provisions. You have provisions with them that they're obligated to comply with any removal order validly issued by the commission, if that's what ends up having to happen. You have funds on deposit that you can draw on in the event that SPPF does not fulfill their obligations. But of immediate concern is to make sure that they're complying with contractual obligations that they have with the town in light of their so-called withdrawal of this, from permitting efforts with regard to the existing project and any potential expansion project. I just want to clarify for you in terms of NOI, which I'm sure everyone knows what it is, but in case anyone is curious about it or a little bit unclear, that is a notice of intent, and it's basically a permit application before the commission. And I just want to clarify, there's an issue of a notice of intent permit application for an expansion project. And that's different than issues related to the existing project. The existing project already has a permit. There's an enforcement order ordering removal of the structure that was upheld by the Superior Court. Compliance with that removal order does not require any type of notice of intent. It just requires presenting a plan to the commission if they're going to go forward and stick with the ordered removal of the existing project. A plan has to be presented to them that will satisfy them that the enforcement order is being complied with, and that removal will then take place under agreed terms and conditions. But that is all that's required for that. No new notice of intent is required on that. For removal, they need to present a plan to the commission, both from a qualified contractor about what exactly is going to be done when, and what's going to be done with the existing structure, what's going to be done with the existing sand, and what happens in the meantime in terms of any type of storm or continued erosion events, or in the need for required sand mitigation. So both the plan itself, what exactly they're proposing about how that removal be complied with, and also the timing of it, what might make sense to the commission if they can be satisfied that the timing of the removal maybe takes place after the storm season or something like that. Then, in other words, an actual time frame is set down, as opposed to just willy-nilly going out and removing it at maybe a time that doesn't make any sense. One thing that the board needs to be cognizant of is there's an existing sand deficit that was that resulted in this enforcement order. And SPPF and the board were going to great lengths to try to resolve that sand deficit through a mitigation proposal that SPPF would make up for the amount of sand that they weren't in compliance with the project over the last few years. With SPPF so-called walking away, that mitigation plan is not going to be able to go forward. In other words, making up for that prior sand deficit, unless the town wants to take over that obligation of providing that sand. So right now, and the reason I say there are issues of immediate concern before the board is, first of all, with any notice of intent for an expansion project. As you saw earlier tonight, with talking about potential relocated roadway, there are a lot of uncertain issues and unanswered questions. So I would recommend that instead of having the commission act on any notice of intent for an expansion project, in other words, a potential denial of that, that an agreement does get reached with the Conservation Commission, that the commission is agreeable to having the town, through the board and SPPF withdraw that notice of intent without prejudice. As you may know, it came up recently about, you have a local bylaw in Nantucket that prevents repetitive applications following a denial. So with the uncertainty of, you don't know what you may be applying for, if anything, in the future, you don't want to be in a situation where you have to wait 3 years to do something if you wanted to file some additional application. So what I would recommend is you withdraw it without prejudice. Then you don't have to worry about any potential refiling, that the commission would not be able to hear that within 3 years. So that's the first thing that you need to deal with. From the sound of it, it sounds pretty easy if SBPF is really walking away, unless the board is going to be willing to pursue, an expansion of the existing project, which doesn't appear to be the case. It sounds like a pretty easy decision to just get that withdrawn without prejudice, and then the future can take place however it takes place. The other issue of immediate concern is the removal order. So the removal order has been upheld by the Superior Court. SBPF did not appeal that ruling. The board and the town manager have been working with SBPF to try to resolve that issue with the commission. But now that SBPF says they're not going to be involved in the project in the future going forward, you need to deal with that removal order ASAP. So it sounds from Vince that there's a meeting tomorrow night that they're talking about the removal concept and the proposal to do that. Hopefully they're going to address timing on that. And so if things stay the same and SBPF sticks with their letter and the board is not interested in taking over the existing project, and keep in mind that would also involve making up for that sand deficit that has occurred that resulted in the enforcement order. If the board isn't willing to go forward and try to get cooperation from the commission to maintain the existing structure going forward, you want to make sure that that removal order is properly implemented and complied with by SBPF. And so again, that's through them presenting a proposal to the commission, both as to substance and the timing of that. And you do have funds on deposit in the event, that SBPF breaches their obligation about complying with that removal order. So those are really the only, of all the myriad of issues facing you with this area of the island, those are the issues really of immediate concern. Making sure that the notice of intent for the expansion project gets withdrawn without prejudice, and also making sure that if removal of the existing structure is to take place, that SBPF complies with its contractual obligations with the town to make sure that that's done in a manner that is satisfactory to the commission.
Thank you, George. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I have a question, George. How much leeway does the Concom have in time of removal? Can they say we'd like it after this storm season or after next storm season? Like, how much leeway do they have to choose that date? Or is that just dictated?
They have leeway. They have discretionary authority over that. And they're in the driver's seat on the removal order. So, and again, it was upheld by the Superior Court. If parties aren't going to go ahead and try to maintain it in place, they have to be satisfied that there's a removal order, but they have total discretion about what conditions they would accept for that. And that would include the timing of it.
Right. Because I think one of the things I think about is this is just for the public, is sort of the last thing we want to do is remove it before the end of the storm season, have the first storm come and have something catastrophic, and then and then not have any of this in place yet. And so, if there's a way to buy, for the Concom to buy a little time, for this to enable it to be, that might make the most sense, but that, again, that's up to them. We don't have control of that any longer, but I think that's, that was one. Yeah, that's.
Okay. I have 3 hands raised. I'll take these 3, hopefully not too lengthy comments. Emily Van Dixhorn.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. My question is, if you're, I would think you're aware of how Martha's Vineyard was awarded $10 million from FEMA. to fight erosion. I'm very sensitive to the issue of the cost for this. And so I'm wondering if you, as a town, have applied for a similar $10 million grant. And if not, if you really have exhausted your efforts to use the geotubes and extend them effectively. Oh, did you hear my question?
Yes, about whether we've applied for a grant similar to Martha's Vineyard.
Vince is checking his bank account right now.
Okay, and my my other question related to that and sensitivity to cost is, my understanding is that the requirements of the original pilot project for the sand were not scientifically based and were approximately double what naturally erodes, so that if the town could negotiate a more accurate requirement of the sand needed to mimic natural erosion, the costs would be reduced greatly.
Right.
And if that's incorporated in the accounting of how much it would cost to maintain it for however long you would choose to do that.
Okay, thank you. Vince?
To answer Emily's question about applying for grants, we're looking for grants all the time. Grants are competitive. We have not applied for the type of federal grant that she is talking about from FEMA. We can certainly look into that in the future. I'm looking for every and any grant opportunity I can get my hands on. But they're always competitive, and just because Martha's Vineyard won one doesn't mean Nantucket would win one either. But it is the process that it is. I can speak to some of the sand questions, but I think those have been discussed at length here in the past, but I can certainly give a brief overview if you wish.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the new NOI
Yes, the new
addressed that concern.
It did in detail. It would be filled up to a set level and then be nourished in something that would be closer to what the bank sheds per linear foot. That was the idea there. But that NOI is now, we know where that's going.
Right, that's not what the original permit was based on.
Yeah, not the initial, but it was also based on the width and the height of the bank.
Correct.
So it was going to be broken up into 4 reaches or 5 reaches, so that so each section would more closely mimic what was there, and so that was.
Yeah. So yeah, the original permit called for 22 yards per linear foot. That was more than the bank might have shed in that area. But because it was a pilot project, that seemed considered prudent at the time. And years of information have improved our understanding of this.
Thank you. Holly Pagan?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Holly Madison Pagan. I grew up 106 Baxter Road every summer of my life. And as a family, we have watched the erosion encroach on our property. We've also witnessed this fight from all angles. And I guess what I'm here to say is common sense. I really urge everyone to back down and really look at this from a common sense point of view. The fact is, if those tubes are pulled out willy-nilly, the whole bank's going to go, and homeowners are going to be completely left without resources. I urge you to really step away from the politics and look at what a dangerous situation we have here. And I know that there are a lot of Sconseters who feel the same way. I know we come off as a bit over-enthusiastic or emotional, but we're a very strong community and we care very much about Sankaty, about the lighthouse, and about how much people enjoy coming to see our end of the island. So I guess it's not a question. I just urge you and everyone involved with this to use a bit of common sense and to not put us in a situation where we're running for our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Meredith Moldenhauer.
Hello, members of the Select Board. My name is Meredith Moldenhauer. I've been working with Vince and Josh Posner on behalf of the SBPF in connection with the NOI and the project. Our letter to the Select Board did ask for a potential meeting with the Select Board. I'm here tonight, actually, based on the fact that I had reached out to Vince to confirm the process for tomorrow's Concom meeting. And, Vince asked me to be present tonight to answer any questions that you may have on behalf of SBPF. We have worked collaboratively with Vince in the town over, many, many months to try to resolve a lot of tough issues. We're very sad to be in this position tonight, but given the current situation, we are moving forward and asking for withdrawal. As Mr. Pucci stated earlier this evening, this would be withdrawal without prejudice, allowing for a future application if one was ever ripe filing. As we asked in the letter, we asked for the Select Board to continue to strive to work forward towards maybe a path forward. We know that the town's coastal resiliency plan does articulate a holistic approach to having private-public partnerships such as this in this community as well as other communities throughout the island. And we think that calls on the Select Board for continued leadership to try and find a resolution between what we've seen as an impasse with the Concom. And we hope that potentially maybe our withdrawal as a party may allow for the Select Board and the Concom to move forward with what we heard as a proposal earlier this evening, such as a working group between the Select Board and the Concom to find a path forward in general for these types of projects that don't include delay, litigation, attorney requests, and as you know, delay has a consequence. Nothing can move forward, and it is creating obviously an inability for us to be able to continue forward here. We are obviously able to answer any other questions, but want to make sure that we address those. There's also questions regarding the removal. We have filed a removal plan as required. That will be heard tomorrow evening. I believe Vince made a comment that the NOI is not on the schedule, but when I double checked the online schedule, it says that the NOI is on the schedule for tomorrow evening, as well as the removal process. We have hired a third-party consultant, Haley and Aldrich, to provide a letter that outlines the removal process that will move forward with in accordance with the Concom's orders. Thank you.
Did we lose you?
Sorry, I just said thank you. Can you still hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Thank
Okay.
you.
No problem, sorry.
No problem. So it seems that the appropriate path is for someone to make a motion to withdraw the NOI without prejudice, and for us to continue to work on getting a meeting with the Concom and to also see kind of how they proceed tomorrow night with their discussions on the removal. Does that seem fair?
I move that we withdraw the NOI without prejudice.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I think the rest is just some direction. It doesn't require a motion.
Right. Yeah, I do think we sort of need to find a way to come up with our paths and what are we going to discuss with the Concom meeting when we have it. Those are the sort of two that I'm thinking. I've been at this the longest. I'm disappointed, really disappointed as well. I felt like we really were, had a chance of we were getting close, and I thought we had a chance. And when I look at the overhead maps, or when I stand out there and watch the number of people that bike and run and use that area, use the road, not necessarily the beach, but it's the road. It's an important part of, summer in Sconset and summer on Nantucket. So I think it is unfortunate that we can't find a way to at least, I don't think we'd ever stop erosion, but I think it's unfortunate if we can't find a way to slow it down, which I think the geotubes did. And if there's enough sand on them, I think there was not the drastic impact that people thought there'd be. And over time, we were planning to have triggers in that would, that we would start the next phase as necessary. But I just think, I just have a pit in my stomach when I think of, I like to try to, solve things and fix things. It's sort of how my brain is wired. It's how I work in my business. And it's just frustrating. And I have a pit in my stomach that we've got a situation that we couldn't fix, that I couldn't fix, that we couldn't find a equitable path forward is just, it's unsettling to me. And I really, and then you all know me, I've got a cheap side. The millions and millions of dollars, I got someone laughing over here. The millions and millions of dollars we're going to spend is just frightening for something that not necessary. So I'm sorry that we're at this. It's unfortunate we're at this situation.
Sure, we all are.
I know.
We've spent a lot of time, and you have spent the most.
But you guys are not as cheap as me.
But yeah, I remember my grandparents' first house here was out in Cisco on Osprey Way. And I remember when all of the houses at the end went away, kind of slowly one by one. And I think it's going to be really shocking to a lot of residents and tourists. And when some of those kind of iconic houses are gone, when the lighthouse is threatened again, and frankly, like you said, when the road is completely gone or the bluff walks disappearing even more. So yeah, it's I hope that Concom will actually give us a little bit of direction on if there is any kind of a path to at least have some level of protection so that doesn't happen so quickly anyway. Anybody else? Okay. Continued review of town-sponsored warrant articles for 2023, annual town meeting, ballot questions, review of the draft warrant.
Okay, so since last week, we've developed a draft warrant. You've seen only lists so far of warrant articles. So I'm going to take you through what it looks like. Yeah. Okay. So cover page. And then we start in with the usual articles. And they stop getting numbered pretty soon. Article 7. These are some of the personnel compensation plans, non-union, certain positions, not all of them. And I'm only showing these red line changes for you, so you can see what we're looking at here. We're proposing EMT call hourly rate be a little bit increased. Same with call firefighter hourly rate. Student police officer hourly rate, that's a new position. And then some increases to the seasonal employee compensation schedule. Everything would increase by $1. And we're taking a look at the town clerk salary. All right, so keep going. Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Yep.
Just the call hourly rates, the firefighters 27, student police officers 30. Is there some difference?
There are some differences, but I would have to get back to you as to exactly what they are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. 8, 9, 10 is the capital article. So as you know, the projects themselves will be in the Finance Committee motion ultimately to this article. So 10 is as is, and then we have a series of potential standalone capital articles that would most likely be debt exclusions. And right now, we're in, these are a little bit rough and they're in process. The finance director and I have been working on recommendations for the allocation of free cash and how these capital projects would be funded. So right now, we've got, and these are all in the capital plan, the Warrant bike path construction, 4.6 million, and that takes into account the grant that you approved the agreement for earlier. Surfside area roads, this is the water main extension and transportation improvements that we don't have all of the funding for. You've heard an update about this about a month ago. Dredging Myacomet Pond, we're discussing, and that $4 million would be offset by hopefully some area property owner contributions, potentially as well as land bank contribution. We're talking to them about that too. Town Pier supplemental funding. This is offset by a $1 million grant that we just received from the Seaport Advisory Council through the state. Nobodere, 2 additional grass fields at Nobodere for 3.8 million. These are in the Parks Master Plan. And landfill closure phase 1. This is supplemental funding. We need an additional $5 million for those closure costs because they've significantly increased. Don't pay attention to that next part. That's just sample wording for these articles.
Yep, on it, if I, on those issues, are the, at the Nobodere fields, are the sprinklers, are the irrigation fixed? Because they were bone dry last summer.
Completely fixed.
All right, good. That's amazing. And then the other issue we should be thinking about as a board, do we want to bring, if we bring everything, sometimes it's too much, and certain things that we are maybe bigger or more important, like don't make it, so we sort of, if there's if some things are more a priority than others, do we want to kick anything to the fall? Would be something for us to think about or talk about. Have you guys discussed that?
Well, we've discussed it a little bit. These are far fewer capital projects than we've had for the last couple of years, number one. Number two, we hesitate to bring too much to a fall special because people generally expect large projects in a bunch to be at the annual. And these are, I guess I would say, considered priority projects that aren't able to be funded through existing revenue sources.
Right, but I think
and some of them are being offset by the.
Right. Well, I'll speak to Wall Win it. I think if we're going to get $1.5 million, we're coming up with $3 million, but we're still how many years away from even being able to do it? We may not have to do that. And if we were going to get $3 million, what would we use it for? Would we use it for the Wall Win bike path, or would we, use it to fix the sidewalks by the school, or do a roundabout at Four Corners, or what, sort of some part of us is we have to prioritize, and I'm not picking one or the other, but I think, this was low down in on the list. It was low down. It's jumping up because it was, we had some money available. It will jump higher if there's a lot of money raised, and it would jump more quickly. So that would be one that I might consider passing over. So anyway.
Well, you all definitely can make that determination, and it will have to be done in the next week or so.
That's why I'm bringing it up. Yes.
Libby, the numbers under those capital articles, are they net of the grants, or the grants come off the top of these numbers?
These are the total costs of those projects.
Okay.
And they would be offset by the grants. We have to appropriate the entire amount, and then so for example, any one of them, like Surfside, we need to appropriate that number, but we would only borrow actually, that's not a good one, because Myacomet dredging.
Right.
We have to appropriate the total cost of the project, but we'll only borrow what what is not provided in the offsets.
Got it.
Okay, moving along. The next article is, and again, all of these articles you have already heard about. So I'm not really going to explain them too much because I've already explained them, unless you want me to, but the ones I'm bringing to your attention will have comments next to them. So this is a change in the description of the Public Works Facility improvements design. We are looking at an additional site, as you know, at 10 Sun Island Road. Septic betterment program, that will be additional funds to go into there. We're establishing a new stormwater enterprise fund, and then we have, these are usual articles here: enterprise funds, operations, capital, budget transfers, waterways, ambulance, ferry fee, county assessment, county budget. We probably will have some borrowing authority to rescind that is not going to be used. We will have an appropriation for OPEB. We'll have an appropriation for the fiscal 24 senior work off. Airport will have some appropriation for the special stabilization fund for accrued employee liability, same with the town. The CPC, as you recall, the board agreed to sponsor that article, so that is in there. Pay no attention to the formatting, it needs to get fixed. Citizen article, zoning. I'm going to skip through all the zoning, and the zoning, by the way, that was in the packet has now been updated. So it is not exactly the same what you're going to see ultimately in the final warrant, but I don't think there are material changes, just some wording changes here and there.
I hate that they ask you a question about zoning.
No, well, hopefully Leslie's on.
I'll be quick. The wording, it says select board for the planning board on all of those. Some of these articles I would not necessarily support. So is it inferring that the select board supports these?
No, it's inferring that the select board is putting them on the warrant for the planning board. It is not intended to infer support.
Okay, so the planning board can't just put their own articles on?
No, they cannot.
They can't. Well, I think it has to be clear that we don't support all of these.
We can, if there's ones that we feel strongly about, we can make a comment on them. And we've done that in previous years, and we may want to do that in some of the short-term rental, because if we're saying we don't want any of the short-term rental stuff to happen, we may put a strong comment on all of the short-term rental articles, because we want that determined once the committee has done their work and we come in the fall. And so, like, that's one example.
Yeah.
But there's I think it says there's one of the things we've asked, proponents, the planning board and others to come forward with the impacts, et cetera. And then the comment is, well, there's no impacts. But as we know, and as we've learned in Nantucket, there are some huge impacts. And so that's part of what happens. We end up having to it's almost becomes a philosophical, when you don't have the full analysis, it ends up becoming a philosophical discussion, unfortunately.
Yeah, well,
which is very problematic, and it gets voted philosophically at town meetings sometimes, which is unfortunate.
There's just some of these zoning articles look like they should have been individual citizen warrants.
Leslie does have her hand up. I don't know if maybe you have specific questions on any of them. Leslie Snell.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something that Matt Fee mentioned. Any of the articles that are in the warrant that are relative to short-term rentals are not sponsored by the planning board. Those are citizen petition articles.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And the planning board can make a comment on those articles as well, is my understanding, so.
Does anybody have specific questions on zoning for Leslie on any of the articles? No, okay.
The questions usually come once we get the maps and we see where they all are, and and really focus on it. But
You can always attend the planning board meetings when they start going over them. Erica, I think we're going down to bylaw amendment, false private alarms. It's page, it's listed as page 25. The warrant page number is 25. There you go.
False private.
Yep. This is a little bit new. This wasn't in your list previously. This is something that was developed by the fire chief. And the basic change, I'm just going to read you a little bit of a summary, is that the original bylaw was drafted to encompass commercial fire alarm systems and ignored typical residential fire alarms. The changes now treat all false fire alarms the same, using the same methodology that is used to deal with false intrusion burglar alarms. They've been having some real problems with false fire alarms. Okay, next is, this is an article you've seen, a bylaw amendment for, related to the revolving accounts. And there already was a change, and we added a new item for concessions. So the idea is that rental payments from concessions would be deposited into a revolving account, and then those funds used for the upkeep of town-owned concession facilities. And the wording might still need a couple of minor tweaks, but nothing material. Citizen article is next. Citizen outdoor lighting, that's a citizen article. It's kind of long.
Yeah.
The next one they've seen is Nancy's article. It's a general law acceptance for regarding voter registration deadlines, and then a citizen article, and then the town council form of government, that's citizen, and the next citizen home rule petition about change of government, that's really long. I think the one after that is the housing bank. Oh, okay. Hold on, let me get there. Okay, so Erica, page 68 of the. Your numbers don't, I can't see. I mean, the what's printed on the warrant document, page number. Oh, because that stuff in the bottom is in the way?
I'll give you, hang on, we can give you the 65.
Okay. It's basically right there where you are.
It's
No.
199
Oh,
of the
sorry.
packet, of the up-to-date packet. I think is it. Is that it, Libby?
No, this is still. It's, okay, keep going.
Wait,
down
I've got a
that-
different.
Yep, you're almost there. I think that's it right there. It's before affordable, right before affordable housing. Yeah, right there. So this is, you discussed this, and then, but then Brooke, you emailed me earlier. Is this what you emailed me earlier about?
Yeah, there were two proposals that were brought before the Affordable Housing Trust with regard to language describing affordable and attainable housing. One was to change the declaration of trust of the Affordable Housing Trust, and the other was a home rule for the CPA language. And we decided not to pursue the CPA one because we haven't had conversations with the CPC enough. So this is just the wrong, there's two of them. This is just the wrong one. The one I emailed you is the correct one.
Okay.
Vicky wrote them up for both, so.
Okay, and this is the one you emailed me?
This comes out.
A home rule petition?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so this home rule petition was going to be removed and replaced with a different article that is.
An amendment to the Declaration of Trust of the
Got it.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the email I sent you is the exact language she wrote up.
Okay, thank you. I probably didn't understand that
It's
one.
formatted oddly, but it's.
Got it. The next article, which is shown as, it's shown with strikeout in the title, that is not needed this year per Representative Fernandez. Tucker spoke with him last week, so that can be skipped. That's kind of long as well. And the next one after that is Sewer Act. And that's just a carryover from last year, it hasn't passed yet. The next one is the same thing. It's a home rule petition to amend the charter from recommendations from the Town Government Study Committee, hasn't passed yet, so it's resubmitted. And you've seen all these. Fertilizer, we talked about this. This is in, you already saw that one. 50 Alta Rock, that's a carryover from last year. Ames Ave, carryover from last year. Pension bonds, carryover. Okay, I want to bring your attention to this. And if John is on, if you have any questions, he can take it up. This was the home rule petition to amend the charter to allow for select board terms to increase to 5 years. And there was some discussion about the varying terms to make sure that they're not all up at the same time. So John has prepared this language and we've added it. So just so I just wanted to point that out. Okay. This is a new home rule petition to convey real estate from the town to the land bank, and it actually is a companion article with an article a little bit later on that relates to just the transfer of, like it says, these sort of miscellaneous parcels to the land bank that are not of use for municipal purposes. This needs a little work. Vicki, you probably have given me a new one by now.
I have submitted a new one for you. So that the property descriptions will be in there. The one thing that I'll point out is that these properties are open space properties. They're held for open space. So for that reason, we need to have a home rule petition filed for them.
Great, thank you. Stand by. This next is a citizen petition. Long-term lease authorization for solid waste facility. We've talked about that. This it was on your list previously, utility easement on Surfside Road for sewer pump station, but we've discovered it's no longer needed because we're not using, National Grid does not need that anymore. However, we do need this one at Wilkes Square, which was on your list previously. This is the companion article that I talked about just a second ago to the home rule petition. The properties, the specific properties. This real estate, next one is for the water main project. We talked about that one. The next one this is a little bit new, conveyance of portions of Baxter Road, and this relates to the potential, this is possibly getting a little ahead of ourselves, but it would convey discontinued portions of the road when it's time to do that to abutters, in a nutshell. Is that right, Vicki?
Yes. So once we do a discontinuance and a back to road, then we have the authority to be able to convey out either easements or portions of the road to the abutters.
Thank you. This is an easement to be conveyed.
Well, can I ask a question while we have Vicki here?
Mm-hmm.
So say we've done a discontinuance and we've voted it and it's gone to town meeting and town meeting did it, has approved it. Can the people that we're discontinuing the road on, can they oppose it?
So the discontinuance had already happened, correct? I'm sorry, I lost your, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I'm asking just in a general, just so I understand the process better. We brought this to town meeting for northern part of Baxter Road, and town meeting voted it discontinued. Is there any actions after the town meeting vote that need to happen?
No, once we have the authority to be able to convey out these portions. So the road, once it's discontinued, would be a town way, and that this will then allow the town to be able to convey out portions of the roadway, either the fee or easements in the roadway to the abutters.
Got it. So now let's pretend now we want to convey them. We want to convey them out.
Yes.
Can they just refuse them? We want the road. We don't want to take this conveyance.
No, well, I mean, the road is now a town, it's actually, they actually will own it eventually. That's what's going to happen. They own to the center line of the way.
Now, I understand what will happen. What I'm asking is sort of a slightly different question. Can the abutters at any point, can the abutters or the public at any point oppose a discontinuance?
Yes, they would be able to oppose the discontinuance when there's a vote scheduled for the discontinuance of the roadway by the town.
Right. And then once it's through, it's through.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
East Creek Road, I think we've talked about that. That relates to some improvements that the land bank is making on its property in the vicinity. There are some other real estate articles that I think I have them now, but I didn't have a chance to get them in here, and they include what's listed here: Dartmouth Lane near Delaney. That is I believe that's a taking, and I don't recall the exact purposes. Some conveyance of these parcels to the land bank, Goose Pond, East Bay, and I think those are actually in now. Should have removed that.
Hey, Libby, if I may,
Yep.
those parcels, Goose Pond and the East Creek to Spruce, are contained in that miscellaneous parcels article.
Okay.
That's going to be conveyed to the land bank. And the Dartmouth Lane is actually a taking that's going to correct a taking that was originally done over Dartmouth Lane, reserving some rights. And so the town is now going to acquire those rights.
Okay. And we have a late article that came in today, which regards taking some, is it an easement or Stone Alley?
Yes, Stone Alley is going to be an easement, a taking of an easement over Stone Alley for pedestrian access and bicycle access and possible repairs.
Okay, thank you. And then we have these articles that you've already seen: Mayflower Circle, Daffodil, 31 Easy. This came in the other day. You hadn't seen this yet.
Libby, I have a comment to make on that. Andrew was going to speak to that, and he had to go off island for medical reasons. This is the same article that I was given the opportunity to present last year, and was given a lot of advice from the voters in terms of the things that we needed to do. So we actually listened to them, and what we have done is there's been a lot of work done by the land bank, by the Steamship Authority. The owners themselves had taken a look at the building and understood there are some problematical issues with respect to it. And this parcel is really needed if we're going to look to address the waterfront area down by the steamship. And so this is something that I think needs to be supported and moved forward. And we've done a lot of different things that I think will give people comfort that in fact, we've had the discussions and negotiations with the owners. Those are ongoing. And this is something that should be put forward, and we should be able to resolve moving forward to help address the issues with respect to coastal resiliency, who are concerned with respect to this, as well as the land bank and the Steamship Authority in terms of making this property help in terms of addressing that area.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. And at some point, if there were to become an opportunity to acquire, there would be an appropriation at a subsequent town meeting.
That is correct.
That's it. The last two articles are standard articles that go at the end. So by next, I forgot about the election warrant. So just to take you, yeah. So while that's coming up, the election warrant is at the end of the town meeting warrant, and they're adopted simultaneously for voter registration purposes mostly. And so it's the offices that are up for election, and then the ballot questions will be, that's just a sample shown there so I can use the wording, but the ballot questions are things that will be either those standalone items that I showed you the list of earlier, the ball fields and the Wycomic Pond and those things. And there might be some items in the FinCom motion to the capital articles for things like a capital exclusion. So for example, some vehicles or some stuff like that. But Brian and I need to get that settled because those questions need to get in here. And so at your meeting next week, we hope to we are planning to have for you a list of the ballot questions as well as those standalone items and the free cash allocations. And that's it on the warrant. So no action really needed right now, unless you all have questions.
Okay. Next up, select board's reports and comments. We've got to reaffirm a vote taken in executive session or announce the vote taken in executive session regarding a request for additional funding for 31 Fairgrounds Road affordable housing project. Brian Sullivan.
Hi, Don. We have a quorum here of the Affordable Housing Trust, so I just wanted to open the public meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, no problem.
And move to the first item on the agenda. Thanks.
Tucker, did you want to make a comment before we move forward?
Sure, if it's helpful. Tucker Holland, Housing Director. As Brian Sullivan mentioned, we have a quorum of the trust members here tonight, as well as the project sponsor, Housing Nantucket, and CUSPA, the project management consultant, Steve Hollister, and the builder of the project, Billy Cassidy, I believe are all on Zoom to basically be available to answer any questions. In short summary, this is a project we all are excited about, has made good progress. There have been a couple of cost increases along the way during the pandemic in the last 3 years and associated labor cost increases and so forth that I think many of us here on the island are familiar with. Roughly, 2/3 of those increases relate to programmatic changes, building to a higher standard, building larger apartments for the future residents and so forth, part of it being a result of the HDC process. And then the other roughly 60% related really to these increases that are being passed through from suppliers and so forth. I know the board had a chance to discuss it previously, but we're here to answer any questions that we can that are helpful.
So we did discuss this last week in executive session, and it was a positive vote to move forward with funding this project. There were some concerns about not being able to get fixed prices and having kind of surprises as these things go forward. But ultimately, the vote was a 3-2 in favor. So I'm not sure that we need to do anything else.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was about I voted in opposition. I had questions that were not able to be answered that night at that time. Since then, Tucker has sent a bunch of documents, a bunch of the change orders and a bunch of other things. I have a couple questions from that. One said there was an option for, one of the change orders said locked in pricing for commodity portion upon request and requires payment for storage. So that was an option on the purchase of the units of the things. And I'm wondering, was that option considered? Number one. And the other one is, how did that agreement define commodity? Like what, was it only the fridges or was it more parts of it? So those were the two questions I had once I reviewed the documents that you guys had.
Madam Chair, Billy Cassidy here.
Oh, go ahead, Billy.
Through you to Matt. Matt, regarding the locked-in pricing, what locked-in pricing means to KBS is paying for those commodities, which are typically, as I'm sure you're aware, asphalt shingles, sheetrock, studs and lumber and so on and so forth. And they calculate it represents about 25% of the contract. So the answer is yes, it was considered. Storage represents about $1,000 a month per building plus transport. I can elaborate on this very deeply, or I can tell you that I rejected it out of hand, and I'm happy to again elaborate, but I don't think the juice was worth the squeeze, so to speak.
So of the 1.7 increase, 25% was commodity, or what would?
No. It would be more along the lines of 25% of $500,000. So, and so here's how it works. You pay for all of that. You buy all of the commodities when you sign the contract. The commodities are then delivered to South Paris, which is where the KBS facility or the modular outfit is. And then it is shipped over 20 minutes away to another facility that they have in Oxford, where it's stored. Oxford is the location of the former Kaiser modular building facility. And when the project goes online, transport becomes necessary to bring it from one property over to the other. The Kaiser facility is unmanned, unattended. So it essentially goes into a warehouse. You bought the product, it's stored until it's necessary, and then it's brought back. That incurs an additional labor cost, which we never got to. I can tell you that I am comfortable. I would make the same decision today. I would not pursue that. I've never been any good at trying to guess the future. And that was my decision alone.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. I thought we didn't need to actually take another vote per John Giorgio. Okay. All right. So that's it. Brian, if you want to adjourn your meeting.
Great, thank you, Don. I'd like to adjourn the January 11th Affordable Housing Trust meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker. Are there any committee reports?
I'll do the crack committee again, the flood, I'll just do it quickly. The topics we discussed, the flood maps on town GIS plus utilities are on the maps, are really good. WPI gave a great presentation on what are the options at the Whaling Museum and how are they going to make their changes, and the Historical Association is looking at doing that sort of planning for all their buildings. The Land Bank had a great presentation on Washington Street and the plans, and it showed sort of where the pathways are going to be, where water will reach the street and reach behind. The plan has an 8-foot high path that's really basically, it's got an 8-foot high path, which is really like sort of armoring to keep the water coming in. And it has, sand and dunes and things in front of it. And it'll be a bike and a pedestrian path, and that is blocking the water. And the interesting thing that happened when they ran the scenarios is they found that a lot of the water was coming from Commercial Street, and they were talking about the need for temporary flood walls to go up at the end of that street, or we should be sure that if and when we ever start doing Wilkes Square, start doing that project, that it is all designed in concert with this to, sort of stop that water that's coming in. It was really well done, and we should be, utilizing that, those in the future. And when you actually can block the water like that, it was amazing the difference. On the map, you could see when you could actually block it, there was, there was a substantial difference in the amount of water that would come in at the different levels of flooding that we will be potentially seeing. So, and when we do the National Grid lot, hopefully we'll be able to do that. So that was one. The other comment was, we've recently received the alternative opinion on the HDC, and I'd like that to be on a future meeting to discuss, because I think what it is saying is that the HDC is similar to the steamship. They're formed and able to appoint committees themselves. And so that I'd like to have that on as a future discussion, because some of the things we're talking about and some of the sort of the knots we're tying ourselves into to get these committees back may not be necessary if we follow that legal advice. And so that would be something for a future meeting, I hope. Thank you.
My question. I'm sorry, that was the question that I brought up at the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, based on that, you brought that question based on that document. Yes, good, thank you.
Okay. And Brooke?
I just wanted to comment that the lottery for the affordable and workforce housing units at Sandpiper was held on Monday night, and it's exciting to see more homeownership units coming to fruition for the community.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
My battery made it.